This game reveals a few of my weaknesses when it comes to endgame play, at least the way my play stood 10 years ago. I was beaten by a much stronger player, but also by a much more experienced endgame player who managed to exploit all my weaknesses and who understand the subtle features of the position very well. So in this position I was playing with the black pieces, and I was a bit concerned that I couldn't get my king into the center. And I'll just show how the game went on. So I thought, oh well, I need to try to get the king into the center. And also I thought, well, my opponent's rook is so active, so it really plays to my advantage to exchange that rook. In reality, I should have been thinking a bit differently. I should have been thinking, well, based on the pawn structure and the placement of the pieces, what pieces do I want to keep on the board and what pieces do I want to exchange? And then I have realized that it's actually to my advantage to keep the rooks on and to exchange the bishops, but instead I did the exact opposite. So if I had just continued with something like c4, this pawn would be fairly strong and I would have some initiative based on that pawn. But I didn't do that. Instead I decided to exchange the rooks and secure the path to the center for my king. So I played rook e7, and I'll just show how the game went on from here. Of course my opponent exchanged the rooks very happily. And here the first thing transpires. Well, first it transpires that all my pawns that matter, the ones that I fixed, they are placed on the light squares, and so is my bishop. So I'm basically in the endgame with a bad bishop, and my opponent has a good bishop. Even though I have what seems like an extra passed pawn, this pawn is easily blocked by the white king and it's not really going anywhere. So I should have realized that even though I seem to have an extra passed pawn, I'm not any better at all here. I should be really playing for a draw. I should try to secure the draw as soon as possible. And the best way to do this was probably just to keep the bishop on the same diagonal. I should have realized here that this pawn is a major weakness, and I need to keep the bishop guarding it, and that the king should be able to guard this pawn quite easily by simply going back to e7 when necessary. So say if I play something like bishop f1, after bishop b3, I would basically have a fortress. The point is that it's really impossible for white to exchange the bishops, because if he does that, that would be really silly of him. He would lose here because the pawn endgame is won for white. Now it doesn't matter what color the pawns are. All that matters is that I still have a passed pawn. So he wouldn't be able to do this, and all I have to do here is just walk back and forth with the bishop. It's impossible to force Zugzwang, so it's just a drawn position probably. Instead of playing bishop f1, I panicked a little bit and I decided to move the bishop away from that diagonal. So I played bishop c6. I guess I decided to transfer it to this diagonal to guard the f7 pawn. But that forced my king to go to b7 and guard the a pawn, which made my king very passive. And we'll see how the game continued. a4. He doesn't want me to come back to b5. That's fine, I thought. Okay, and here I protected the a pawn, but and the f pawn is protected. I thought, well, I'm guarding everything. You can't play bishop c4 because then I just exchange and go to the pawn endgame. But what I missed is that not only my f pawn is very weak, my entire pawn structure is bad here, and my king has gone way too far to the queen side, so he's in no position to guard any of these pawns. So my opponent can increase the pressure on the king side now, and he does that with f3. And I didn't realize the danger, or I didn't realize that I had some better moves here, so I just played without a plan. I played bishop e6, and when g4 happened, I thought, well, I can't let him take on f5, because then the f pawn would be weak. Sorry, the h pawn would be weak. So there's no other way. So I captured on g4, and that was a mistake, a losing mistake probably. Because now this pawn is just going to run. It's going to run forward, and there's no return. My king is too far. It's stuck on b7. It can't help the pawn. It can't help the bishop to stop the h pawn, and the game ended very fast. So 5, there's really no other way. You need breakthrough, capture, capture. And now this pawn is just very hard for the bishop to keep guarding. It's basically completely tied up. Now the threat is to come to g8, so I have to go back. And now he activates the bishop. And now that's it. He managed to transfer the bishop on this diagonal, and now the pawn is going to queen. And now the bad thing is that the a pawn is of the same color as the bishop. Sorry, the queening square for the a pawn is of the same color as the bishop, so this is hopeless. I played a few more moves and resigned. So that was a good lesson, but it doesn't really end here. I decided to go back to this position and try to understand why did I lose so quickly. And I analyzed and analyzed and analyzed this position. So what I'd like to show is how difficult was Black's position. It seems like it has a passed pawn, but once d4 is played, all my weaknesses just come into play, and it's really hard to defend. So what if, say, I decided to make a fortress and not trade on g4? Say if I decided to play a 5 and ask him what he wants to do, like force him to capture on h5, and at the same time I would create some kind of a barrier for the white king, because otherwise he would be able to penetrate through e4. So exchange, and this is a very instructive position now, especially after bishop f7. It's equal material, but Black has 3 weaknesses, and it's really hard to hold them. It does seem like Black has a bit of a fortress, because the white king can't break through. All the squares are covered here, and if he ever tries to